Am I spoiling the first episode? Because I think we pretended like that was the first time we had talked about that. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Nerds You're Looking For podcast, a weekly nerd culture podcast that discusses the culture through various segments. My name, of course, is Patrick Kuhn, alongside my co-host, as always, that Tyler Hunt. How's it going, man?
It's going really well. How are you?
I'm good. Can you believe that this is our 60th episode?
That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, technically, it's our 61st episode, which you guys didn't hear the magic that was episode 1. Let's just say it probably would have won an Emmy.
Go back and listen to our actual episode 1 and how bad that is, and then multiply it by like 50.
What did we do that first episode? I don't even remember.
I actually have notes for it.
Oh, yeah?
I keep notes of all our episodes, and I have the very first one is called the Lost episode.
Yeah.
We should,
what do we talk about?
We should reimagine it someday.
Yeah. Well, you would just have to record. Like, I still have my audio, so you could just react to what I say.
So we did an intro. We did what we're into. I talked about Arkham Origins, and you talked about Shocktober.
Okay.
We did comics, and I don't know what comics we talked about. Nerd news was, we talked about Army of Darkness 2 and Evil Dead 2. The TV show spoilers. Then I have really vague notes about Star Wars and Harrison Ford's Star Wars.
Oh, because some of these we reused for the actual first episode, and I think the Star Wars Harrison Ford stuff was that he only signed on to do the new Star Wars if they would make another Indiana Jones.
Oh yeah, that's right. There was a new X-Men trailer. I guess that would have been for Days of Future Past. Ender's Game. I guess we reviewed that.
Oh yeah, that's what I meant when I asked you what we talked about. I forget about that.
And then our favorite Star Wars character was our nerd favorite.
So. I think we reused that for the actual episode.
Yeah, we did. And our first episode, though,
Am I spoiling the first episode? Because I think we pretended like that was the first time we had talked about that.
We reviewed Thor 2, but you know that Ender's Game review is just lost in the ether.
I know. I mean, I guess I could release it if you guys wanted just like an hour of just me talking to myself. That'd be super awkward.
Oh God. Yeah.
Well, yeah, 60 episodes. That's crazy.
What, 2 years in November, right?
Yeah, I guess like November 13th, something like that. I think that's when we posted our first episode. I'd like to think that we got a lot better because those first couple episodes, and if you stuck with us, I appreciate that because it was a little awkward and we know that. But I feel like we've gotten a lot better and it's been a lot of fun. All right, cool, man. So if this is your first episode, we start off each episode, like Tyler mentioned before. We start off with what we're into. We just like checking in with each other. So Tyler, what are you into this week?
Brittany and I went and saw Black Mass last night.
Who's Brittany?
My wife.
Okay.
I figured that after 60 episodes, I brought her up enough where I could just refer to her as Brittany. But in case you don't know, that's my wife. We went and saw Black Mass last I
Thanks for the invite. I honestly was.
We went and saw the 7.
Oh, okay. I wouldn't have been able to go, but I actually was going to see the late showing on the North Side, but the football game ran late, and so I just decided to watch that instead.
We got home just in time to catch the end of that game, and
that's crazy.
Wow,
yeah.
The Chiefs really fucked that up.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's not what I'm into though. The Chiefs fucking up a game. I'm into Black Mass, and this movie's not bad at all. It's it's kind of entertaining. It's a little dry at times, but the performances are amazing. Johnny Depp especially, and then Joel Edgerton is in it, and Benedict Cumberbatch, and a slew of other actors, a lot of character actors in it as well. It's not a terrible biopic, but I would say it's just pretty average. Like I said, it's pretty dry, and it's crazy because we talked about my top 5 favorite movies last episode, and I think 3 of those movies could be considered gangster movies. And so I'm definitely a fan of those types of movies. And I know a lot of the characters in those newer, especially the newer gangster movies, are kind of inspired by Whitey Bulger. And it's a shame that the movie that was actually about him wasn't as good as some of the movies that I really like. So I don't know. It was entertaining, but it didn't come across as iconic as the person is, or as some of the other movies that are based or influenced by him are. If that makes sense. So.
I'll be real honest with you. I wouldn't say I dislike them, but I'm not huge into gangster movies. They're all right. I mean, I watched it. I mean, Departed was one of those 29 that I talked about in the last few episodes, that the 29 that I had to cut down to get to my top 10 favorite movies. And so I enjoy them. I don't enjoy them as much as you do. I have no idea who he is. I mean, I know he's a big figure in that whole gangster scene. I don't know what you would call it. I know he's a big deal, but I honestly have no idea who he is.
I didn't know a ton about him going into it. I had heard of him before and was kind of familiar with how he was a gangster in South Boston, but I didn't realize some of what happened throughout his life. And I guess I don't want to spoil anything for you since you won't see it, but I didn't realize, I'm just gonna say it. I didn't realize he was on the loose for so long.
Oh yeah?
Like he was on the loose till 2011.
Oh really?
Yeah, so he, was on the FBI's most wanted list for a long time, and I hadn't realized that. I don't remember in 2011 ever reading about him being caught. Yeah. And I'm sure I read like a headline or something and just kind of glanced over it, not really thinking much of it, so.
All right, cool.
Yeah, I mean, Johnny Depp was amazing.
I was just going to ask how he was, because I know, a lot of people are making a big deal out of this performance. And I mean, from the trailers, it looks really interesting. He looks like he's given a really good performance, but it's kind of hard to tell.
I mean, he's become kind of a punchline in the last few years.
Sure.
And, this is definitely a little bit of a redemption for him. But of course, after this movie next year, he has like another Alice in Wonderland movie coming out, and he has another Pirates of the Caribbean movie coming out. So I wonder how much this is actually going to do to revitalize his career in an artistic sense, because he does have so many franchises associated with him.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, man. What are you into?
Well, I was going to talk about this last week, but then we decided to go see The Visit right before we recorded. And so we talked about that instead. I'm going to talk about Road Hard, which is written and directed by Adam Carolla, and his writing partner, I apologize, I don't remember his name. But yeah, pretty much Adam Carolla.
Adam Carolla's name, let alone his writing partner.
He also stars in it as well, obviously. I'd actually heard about this movie a long time ago, because it was kind of one of those, it wasn't quite up there with the Zach Braff movie, but it was kind of like people had some backlash because he crowdfunded this movie. And I know people have a really weird, opinion of when famous people like that crowdfund things, which I think is silly, because obviously he's not going to pay out of his own pocket to make a movie. Yeah. That's just, people don't do that. But anyways, that's beside the point. I don't want to get in this whole tirade about
he did a really nice interview on Nerdist, I think, right? When came out, where he defends it, and he did a really good job of defending it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Basically, this movie is about a former stand-up who loses his TV show and has to go, basically forced to go back on the road, hence the title, to kind of pay the bills. And I know I've talked about this a lot, and I apologize for everyone. And Tyler's already smirking because he knows what I'm going to say. I apologize, and I know I sound really pretentious, but obviously, I do dabble in stand-up, so I always enjoy movies that are about it. Now, of course, I've done a few road trips to go to shows, like I've talked about. The last month, I've been going to Bloomington drive. That's a few hours drive. Obviously, I know I've never done anything like this movie depicts, so I'm certainly not putting myself in that category or anything like that. But I do appreciate movies that are about stand-up. One of my favorite movies of last year was a movie somewhat like this, as far as kind of behind the scenes of a stand-up comic, which was Obvious Child. Love that movie. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that I love movies about making movies, and I also love movies that are kind of like behind the scenes of stand-up for similar reasons. And so I kind of gravitated towards this movie. Unfortunately, it wasn't the best. It had its moments where it was great. I can't vouch for the fact that it was realistic in the sense that it's a realistic portrayal of a comic going on the road. And I personally think that would be an awesome way to make a living. I'm not even like thinking about like getting famous, but just like the fact that you pay your bills by doing this, I thought would be amazing. They don't shine like the necessarily a very flattering light on that particular life. And so I can't vouch if that's correct or not, because I just haven't experienced it. And they kind of shine a light on Hollywood and how a lot of things, like as far as getting TV deals and movies and stuff like that, doesn't necessarily have a lot to do with the talent involved. It's just kind of how you play the game. And there's a lot of that stuff. And then there's some stuff where his former co-host on the TV show that he lost, I think it's called like the Bro Show or something, which obviously in the Man Show with him and Jimmy Kimmel, his character in the movie, or his former co-host in the movie has a famous talk show now. So obviously there's a little bit, a similarity there between him and Jimmy Kimmel. And like you mentioned the Nerdist episode, he talks about, Jimmy Kimmel and how people always like, what happened, man? Like he's really famous and I would consider him famous, obviously, but I know a lot, mainstream people know who Jimmy Kimmel is, but they don't know who Adam Carolla is. And it was just kind of, I feel like he put this part in the movie just to be like, I'm really not upset, that I'm really happy that it's worked out for him, because he's worked really hard and all this other stuff. And they keep like hitting that beat throughout the movie.
Yeah.
And I don't know. There was just way too much in this movie. It was just kind of all over the place. And then towards the end, it became like this really cliche rom-com that really bugged me. And he gets spoiler alert, I'm sorry, but he kind of gets completely away from stand-up. And it's a nice movie. I think the first like 30, 45 minutes of it is really great when you see him do stand-up. And the stand-up in the movie is pretty funny, actually, which is surprising, because a lot of movies that are about stand-up, generally they're not going to use their best material, especially if who wrote it is a stand-up. They don't want to use their material, so they kind of use their B and C stuff, and so it's not always the best. But I thought it was pretty good in this movie, so I appreciated that. And it was kind of a darker comedy at the beginning, because he's kind of a miserable person. He's kind of one of those people that he's really talented, but he's kind of his own worst enemy because he refuses to play the game and stuff like that. So I really appreciate that. But then when it started getting into the rom-com stuff, it didn't do it for me.
Yeah, I had a little bit of interest in seeing this. I really appreciated the way that he promoted it on the Nerdist, and I do like Adam Carolla. I like Jimmy Kimmel a lot as well, so I was interested in seeing it, and I just never got around to it, and he didn't really leave me begging to see it or anything, but I'm sure I eventually will, so especially if it gets put on Netflix at some point.
For sure. I would give it, if I had to give it a star rating, I'd give it 3 stars, because I do think it has some good stuff in it.
Yeah.
I just think that he tried too much. Like, there's a whole subplot with him like living in the garage of his former home that his ex-wife now lives in with this other guy who is, I can't remember his name from Anchorman. He's a sports guy, Champ.
Oh yeah, David Koechner.
Yeah, and he's in like one scene. Like this storyline is like completely forgotten like halfway through the movie. There's just way too many threads that just don't add up towards the end of the movie. Like he just decides after knowing this woman for like a couple of weeks, he just lives with her now. And it's just, it's really weird. And she has this workshop that her ex-husband used to work in, and she loves when he would go out there and work, and Adam Carolla's ex-wife hated when he was out in the garage all the time. And it's just like, it would just lined up too perfectly. And I just like, I'm so cynical when it comes to stuff like that. Anyways, like, how would you find that particular person, that perfect person for you? For me, it just doesn't happen. It got really cliche rom-com stuff at the end, but I would definitely suggest it. Like I said, I would give it 3 stars.
Okay, cool.
All right, so our next segment, just moving right along, is plainly called Comics. Tyler and I read a bunch of comics. We're definitely comic book nerds, and we just like to spotlight 1 or 2 a week. So, Tyler, what are you reading this week?
I wanted to talk briefly about Star Wars Shattered Empire.
Okay, cool.
It's a 4-issue miniseries that is bridging a little bit of the gap between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. I think
cool.
They're putting out a lot of stuff over the next few months, supposedly bridging that 30-year gap. And obviously this being only 4 issues, it's not going to tell us everything, but it is kind of leading up to something, as the first issue kind of shows. I'm going to spoil it a little bit, but it's only the first issue, and not a lot of eventful stuff happens. So I apologize, but the spoilers aren't too big or anything. So like I said, this bridges the gap between 6 and 7. It picks up immediately after the Battle of Endor. And at first, really, it's nothing too incredibly eventful. It kind of shows the closing of Return of the Jedi and what's happening up at the new Death Star and on the starships, and then also what's happening on the forest moon of Endor. And it's following this pilot named Shara Bay. She is just with the Resistance. You don't really know a whole lot about her. After the battle ends, she's on Endor looking for her husband, and she's not sure if he's lived or died during the battle, and she does end up finding him, and you find out that his name is Kes Dameron, and I don't know if that's how it's going to be pronounced, but it leads us to believe that these people are the parents of, or at least related to, Poe Dameron, who Oscar Isaac is playing in episode 7. So that's honestly like the gist of the first issue, not anything really eventful. You kind of get a little bit of banter with Lando and Han.
Sure.
But you definitely don't see a ton from the characters that we know. It's more based on these two characters that they've introduced. So I'm interested to see how it kind of unravels in exactly what bridge it's connecting to The Force Awakens. Because in this first issue, you know, we're already 25% of the way through the story they're going to tell. All we know is that these two characters that fought in the Battle of Endor are probably going to be linked to the X-Wing pilot we see and The Force Awakens promotional material. So it's pretty good, but I'm interested to see what happens with it.
All right. This is one that I decided to skip just because there's a lot of Star Wars books out right now, and then Chewie's going to get his own standalone book, and I'm already reading Lando and Darth Vader, and then of course the main Star Wars book. And I just read so much other stuff that it was just one of those things I of course wanted to read it because we're both huge Star Wars fans. It was just one of those things I just had to make a choice, and a lot of new Marvel books are coming out with the end of Secret Wars that I want to get into. So it was just one of those things that I had to make a grown up choice. And so I decided, even though it is just a 4-part miniseries, I decided to skip this one.
Yeah, I will say I read a lot of the Star Wars books as well, and this is probably the slowest paced
of
all of them, which was surprising to me. But yeah, it's pretty good. All right, man, what are you reading?
I am going to talk about, well, I mean, technically 2 comic books, but they kind of, obviously they feed off of each other. I'm going to talk about Captain America, White, 0 and 1, which 0 came out 6 or 7 or maybe even 8 years ago. I never read it. I was into comic books back then, but it's mostly Spider-Man at the time. I mean, it was a lot later in life that I get into like just expand my comic book reading. So I missed that one, but Captain America White #1 just came out this past week. Got it on Comixology. It was $4.99, which is a little pricey, but it actually came with 0 and 1, which I thought was really cool. I guess they're reprinting 0 and putting it with 1. So yeah, it's a little pricey, but I think it's worth it because you're really getting 2 comic books for $5, which I thought was pretty cool. It is written by, I'm assuming his name is Jeff. He spells it Jeph, which
it's Jeff.
Jeff Loeb, and then it's artwork by Tim Sale, and they're the ones that are kind of famous in Marvel for doing like I guess you would call them the Marvel colors, because they did Superman blue. I think there was a Daredevil yellow, and then I think there was a Hulk something. I don't know. They do all the color books, and basically I love Spider-Man blue. I think it's awesome. It's a lot more. These particular books, and this goes for Captain America White as well, these color books are very much like a superhero is kind of a retrospective. They're reflecting on their past. And in Spider-Man Blue, Spider-Man is thinking about Gwen Stacy and how they met and just how they fell in love and obviously what happens. And so that really captured me when it came out. I thought that was kind of really, really cool. And Captain America White, even though I'm not a huge fan of the character in general, especially his comic book history, I'm not crazy about, but I thought it was really interesting. It follows that same pattern. Obviously, it's a completely different character than Spider-Man, but it kind of has that retrospective feel to it. 0, and I may be flipping these and I apologize. 0, I believe, is Captain America trains Bucky and he becomes his sidekick. And then in 1, Bucky dies. And it's just Captain America reflecting on those 2 events. And it's pretty cool. I mean, it doesn't really wow you with, it wasn't anything that I didn't already know. And I'm not that familiar with Captain America's backstory. Like, I mean, I know it vaguely, obviously, because I'm just reading Marvel Comics books in general. I know of him and his past, just kind of reading other books, but it didn't really do anything. Like, as far as like, if you don't already know, it's not going to really blow you away, but it was just kind of subtly. It was a good read. I would definitely suggest it.
Yeah. I was at the comic book store yesterday, actually, and I saw they had a huge stack of these, and it was like a staff pick and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I don't know a ton about this, but that's really intriguing. And I almost picked it up, and I chose not to. But maybe I'll go back and I'll pick it up now that you have such good things to say about that. And I, for whatever reason, hadn't noticed that Jeff Loeb wrote it. Yeah. And I'm a huge fan of him. He's wrote some of my favorite Batman stories. He did Long Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
And he did Dark Victory and Legends of the Dark Knight. And he just a lot of classic Batman stories, like some of the more well-known stuff after Frank Miller. So I'll probably end up going back and checking that out.
Yeah, it's really good. Like I said, it doesn't do anything dramatic as far as his backstory. It kind of tells you what you probably already know. Most comic book fans are going to already know about him, but it's just kind of cool him reflecting on what happened and just kind of giving a little bit of backstory there. And I really like the color books. I think they're an interesting way to basically tell you the story that you kind of already know, but it's just kind of a cool thing that they do, and they do it really well.
Awesome.
All right. So I guess that does it for comics. Tyler every week compiles all the nerd news, and we just like to talk about it. So I'm going to give it to Tyler.
Okay. So this week is a little bit better than the last few weeks we've had.
Yeah, it's been rough.
Nothing earth shattering. So I have a feeling you probably didn't watch this, but the Jungle Book trailer was released this week.
I did not.
The movie that Jon Favreau's directing, and for Disney, a lot of great talents attached to it. It was a pretty cool trailer. This movie's definitely going to have different tone to it, I think, than what we're used to with like the animated film, but it was pretty cool. So I suggest checking that out if you have not already, like Pat. We'll just keep moving along though. So Rachel McAdams has been confirmed to be in Doctor Strange. I think she was a little hesitant to sign on at first, but she has made that decision. So that's some more great talent for that movie. I mean, they're kind of bursting at the seams at this point with her and Benedict Cumberbatch and Chiwetel Ejiofor and Tilda Swinton.
Yeah.
And Matt Mikkelsen. Like, there's a pretty decent cast there. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, they seem to be doing it the right way, and the new book is starting, so I'm really looking forward to seeing how that is, just because I really liked the Ant-Man book, and it kind of the feel of the movie, even though it didn't exactly line up. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the Doctor Strange book, just to see that kind of the feel of that book and where they're going to go with the movie, because they're not going to put out that book if that's not where the tone of the movie is going to be at. So I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's one of my most anticipated Marvel Now books too. I'm really looking forward for the launch of a lot of those titles. All right. This one's for you, buddy. Woody Harrelson is going to be playing the villain in War of the Planet of the Apes.
Oh, yeah? I did not hear about that.
You didn't know that? Yeah.
No, I normally tweet out a lot of stuff, and I know that I've been slacking on that, and I apologize. Just work has been just stupid busy recently. So I apologize for that, but no, I didn't hear that. That's awesome.
They announced the name of his character, and it was something really generic, like, it's probably wrong, but it's like lieutenant or sergeant or something, some kind of, general.
Sure.
It might have even been general. I honestly don't remember. Obviously that kind of alludes to what was set up at the end of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which is kind
of course,
cool.
Yeah. They're definitely coming, and Gary Oldman he reached out, and they contacted them, and so they kind of teased that. And obviously with the title War of the Planet of the Apes, you kind of assume that there's going to be a war. So, that makes sense.
Yeah, but I don't know. Woody Harrelson over the last few years has kind of had a renaissance, like starting with True Detective and some of the other stuff he's been in. Not that he ever like faltered in quality, but maybe some of the projects he chooses here and there aren't the best, but I think that he's definitely a solid actor and he'll bring a lot to it.
For sure.
All right. So they're making a TV series based around The Mist.
I did see this. This is one of the ones that I did see.
Yeah. So I really like The Mist movie.
For sure.
And I've read a lot of Stephen King in high school, and The Mist was a short story, right?
Yes.
And I read the book that it was a short story, and was it Nightmares and Dreamscapes, or was it something else?
That sounds right, but I don't know.
Okay. Anyways, I remember liking the short story a lot, and they took some liberties with some other stuff in the Frank Darabont movie that I liked a lot. I know some people weren't crazy about how that movie ended, but I thought that it was...
I thought it was perfect.
Yeah,
it was pitch perfect.
It's awesome. Like, that movie is fantastic. So I'm interested to see how they would do a TV show around it.
Yeah.
Post-apocalyptic TV is all the rage right now, so...
For sure.
This is a little off topic. Have you kept up with Under the Dome?
Oh, no. No.
Yeah.
That show's terrible.
Yeah, I watched
it. It's really, really bad.
I remember watching the first few episodes of it and being like, wow, this is garbage. And they're in like season 2 or 3 now.
They're done.
Is it done?
Yeah, I think
renewed or anything.
It just ended just recently, and I think they said like mid-season that of its current or its latest season that it was going to be done at the end of the season. It was really bad. I remember and this happened with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and it may have been the very same time. We were living in an apartment, and our DVR was really shitty, and so it would go out every once in a while, and we didn't know it would go out, and it would just stop recording shit. And so I realized like 2 weeks later that it wasn't recording Under the Dome, and I wasn't upset about it. I was just like, whatever. And then we ended up getting Amazon Prime, and it's on there. And we watched like the first episode, picking up where we left off. Cause I think we got through like 4 or 5 episodes of it. And we got about halfway through the episode, and I looked at my wife. I was like, do you even care if we just shut this off right now? She's like, no, this sucks. And we just turned it off, and I've never thought about it since.
I'm curious how it ended and how it progressed. But it didn't just look really bad. Like I said, I watched like the first 3 or 4 episodes, and it was pretty awful, which is a bummer because I like the concept, and I was really interested in the book, and I never read it.
Well, back to The Mist.
Yeah, I was curious how hopefully this will translate to a better TV show than that.
Yeah, for sure. Would you think that they would go the Fear the Walking Dead angle where it's like the movie exists and they're just a different group somewhere else? I guess you really can't do that because you can because it moved.
Yeah, you could do that, but I get what you're saying. Like that movie,
it was kind of an isolated area that it was in, but it did move apparently because they drove for a while.
Yeah, they were like driving with it or towards it instead of away from it. Yeah, is what was happening. Spoiler alert for a movie that's like 10 years old, but yeah. I don't know. I would imagine it's going to be completely.
They don't even acknowledge
not that like people enjoy that movie like we do. I mean, I'm sure it has a following, but I don't think it has a big enough following to where like, hey, we're making a TV show that ties into this movie that's 10 years old. I would just imagine they're doing something separate.
We've talked a lot about like Shocktober staples and like movies we watch every single Shocktober, and this is one for me. It's The Descent, The Mist, The Crazies. Basically any horror movie that starts with the. No, I kid, of course. But yeah, this is one that I just I managed to kind of slip it in each year just because I love it so much.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. All right, moving on. So the Gambit movie, Rupert Wyatt was set to direct it. He actually, tying into Planet of the Apes, he directed Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Yes, he did.
And he has pulled out of directing it.
Yes,
so this movie is just, it keeps getting blindsided with other things. Like for a while there, we thought Channing Tatum was pulling out of it, and
let's stop saying pulling out, just for like a little bit.
I don't know. I think that what happened was it got pushed back a little bit, and it coincided with something else he was planning on doing, so he dropped out of it.
Yeah,
but does not spell good signs for it. I'm sure.
Yeah, it's a bummer. I mean, obviously he did a really great job with Rise of the Planet of the Apes. So, yeah, I mean, it's a bummer, but honestly, I don't know much else he's done.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know either.
Yeah.
So
too bad there's not a website dedicated to just that.
Yeah, too bad.
Too bad I can't filibuster for you long enough for you to figure it out.
Like, can we have like really chill conversation for just 1 second?
I'll just cut some music in here.
Let's see. He has directed actually 9 things. So he directed like, I would guess like the only big thing besides Rise of the Planet of the Apes was he directed an episode of Turn on AMC.
Really? And that's his biggest thing.
And he also directed that Mark Wahlberg movie last year, The Gambler.
Oh, okay.
So, and besides that, it's like just short movies. He directed something in 2008 called The Escapist. I've never heard of. But yeah.
Okay, so he's done nothing. Pretty much.
Pretty much. And he's dropping out of maybe Fantastic Four scared him off a little bit.
Probably.
Like, maybe I don't want to go the Josh Trank route.
No, for sure.
All right. And then I got one more, and this one was pretty cool, and I'm really excited to see this. It was announced today that Warner Brothers and DC will be giving Bill Finger writing credit.
I saw that today.
Creator credit, I guess, or whatever, on its Batman properties going forward, at least Gotham and then Batman v Superman. So anytime you do or read anything Batman related, you see created by Bob Kane. And for those of you not aware, Bob Kane had a writing partner in either the 30s or the 40s when Batman was kind of coming into its own with its characters. And that writing partner's name was Bill Finger. And he created most of what we know, most of what stuck with Batman through the years.
Yeah.
Especially a lot of the Rogues Gallery and just some of the characteristics of Batman that we're most familiar with, like him being brooding and that kind of stuff. And he never got credit for it.
Yep.
And Bob Kane continuously does, and I appreciate what Bob Kane did for the character, but from what I know and what I've read, it sounds like Bill Finger did more for the character as far as the stuff that I like about Batman. So I'm pretty pleased to see that DC is going to be giving his estate the credit that it deserves.
For sure. The more I've heard about it, and I know Kevin Smith had, I don't remember the guy's name, and I apologize for it. But he had him on for a couple of episodes of Fat Man on Batman, and he talked about, I guess he had wrote a book about it, and how really from his point of view, obviously I don't know that much about it, but from his point of view, it seemed like Bob Kane didn't really do a whole lot. And I know that's kind of blasphemy, but I mean, it is what it is. That's the impression from listening to these interviews. It sounded like that was the impression that guy was giving, was that Bob Kane really didn't do a whole lot and Bill Finger did a shit ton.
Yeah.
And so it's cool to finally, like, justice prevailed.
Yeah. It's funny. I actually asked for that. I had that book on my Amazon wish list one year around Christmas, and I think my parents bought it for me or something.
You haven't read it yet?
I haven't read it, but there's a reason. Turns out it's a fucking kid's book.
Really?
Yeah, you open it up, it's probably like 50 pages, maybe a little less. It's very thin, and it's like, it reads like a kid's storybook. Like, each page is just pictures and
that's weird.
Very small or very low amount of text.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really strange to get that. My parents probably thought that I was a weirdo for wanting it.
Yeah, that's weird. He didn't give me any impression in the interview that it was a kid's book.
Yeah, it's called Bill the Boy Wonder. So, I mean, if you want to check it out, go ahead. But like I said, it is a children's book. So heads up.
Yeah, that's weird.
All right, man. That is all I have for Nerd News this week.
All right, cool, man. So our next segment is just kind of, we've called it our main topic just because it changes from episode to episode. The last few episodes we've talked about our top 10 favorite movies of all time. Well, a few months back, I guess it would have been, we did another list. It was our top 5 summer movie preview. And since summer is about to be over, I guess this will drop on the 21st and the summer's over on the 22nd. So we thought it would be a good time to kind of recap and do our top 5 favorite movies of this summer.
I will say that if you remember the top 5 anticipated movies of the summer.
I keep saying top 10 because we're so, the last like 4 episodes we've been saying top 10. So I'm probably going to do that a couple of times.
I will say Pat and I had different qualifiers for what was going to be a summer movie. So
no, my movies are actually summer movies.
You got very, very literal with it as far as dates on the calendar when the seasons actually change. I considered it more along the lines of when you think of a summer movie, you think of a popcorn movie. So that being said, I just want to give a quick caveat, I guess, to my top 5, and that's I stuck to popcorn movies. So I saw like The Gift. The Gift was released this summer. I fucking loved it. It was a great movie. I did not put it on my list.
It's on my list.
I kind of figured it would be, and I kind of went back and forth, but I kind of kept it to movies like blockbuster movies, like my top 5 blockbuster summer movies.
Sure.
And The Gift was not really a blockbuster movie. It was more of an art house movie. So
yeah,
that's kind of how I went into my top 5, and I'm sure you just went by the date, right?
Yeah, I went by the date, June 21st to September 22nd. But yeah, I did it that way because they're not summer movies if they didn't fall in those dates, because that's when the summer is. So, I thought it would be kind of cool. I don't know if Tyler, you did it this way, but I know, I wrote down, just to kind of give our listeners a refresher, my top 5 summer movie preview. So I'll just run through them real quick. Number 5, I'll just go in order, obviously descending order or ascending order, depending on how you see it. Number 5 was Terminator Genesis, Man from U.N.C.L.E. These are really embarrassing. It gets worse. Minions, which I never even saw. Fantastic Four.
Oh, God. Dude.
And then, of course, I mean, this is kind of redemption, Ant-Man.
Okay, so there might be one movie on that top 5 that actually made your top 5.
No, there's one movie. There's only one movie. Yeah, that's it.
All right, so my top 5 anticipated movies going into the summer were, starting with number 5, Mad Max, then Ant-Man, Jurassic World, Inside Out, and Avengers Age of Ultron was number 1. So
only one of those were actually summer movies.
And just, this is going to spoil my list, but basically my top 5 summer movies was all 5 of those movies in different order.
Okay, cool. It was,
and I didn't purposely do that either. I just refreshed my memory on what my top 5 anticipated was like 5 minutes ago after I made my top 5. So
yeah. So it was a really shitty summer movie season, right?
100%.
One of the worst in years for me, at least.
Yeah. One of the worst I can remember.
Yeah. So that being said, let's just go ahead and get right into it. So what's your number 5, Tyler?
Number 5 is Jurassic World.
Okay.
And this was a movie I really enjoyed quite a bit. I mean, of course, with any of these movies, just about, except for probably some of the movies on past lists, you can go back and listen to our review of on the podcast. But Jurassic World, I didn't have a ton of high hopes for. It was in my top 5 anticipated because I love Jurassic Park so much. I mean, who doesn't? And this movie looked like it was going to be entertaining. I mean, you take the Jurassic Park franchise and you put Chris Pratt.
It's getting late.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, that makes for the perfect summer movie. It's the perfect popcorn movie. It's dinosaurs and Chris Pratt saying funny things and quips. And it really just kind of is what the summer movie season is all about. So I enjoyed it quite a bit. I actually saw it twice in theaters, and the second time I saw it, I didn't like it as much.
Yeah.
So I have a feeling that that's kind of going to be how this movie is for me. Like when it comes out on Blu-ray, I plan on getting it, and I feel like if I watch it a couple more times, I'll kind of like it less and less. I don't remember what star rating I gave it on our episode. It was probably around a 3.5. And after seeing it a second time, it'd probably already be down to a 3 for me. So
yeah, I think I kind of assumed that that's how it was going to be for me. So I think I gave it a somewhat low star rating to begin with, because I figured I was going to knock it down eventually anyways.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't bad. It was entertaining.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of plot holes in it, especially going back the second time and watching it. You kind of notice some strange behavior from characters, and why would this happen, and couldn't you just do this, those types of situations.
Yeah.
So, and it's not really, I mean, none of it, I hate when people say it's not believable.
Yeah.
Because that's like saying, I remember when the first Transformers came out, somebody saying, you know, that's not believable. Yeah, it's not believable. It's robots turning into cars and fighting each other. Like, this is a movie about a dinosaur island. Of course, it's not believable.
Sure.
But there were some, especially the behavior of the dinosaurs wasn't believable, which I kind of cringe at myself saying that, but at the same time, it was just kind of obvious.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So.
Yeah, they kind of jumped to some weird, like, the characters kind of behave in strange ways. They jump to, like, really bold strategies, and it just, I don't know. It felt weird to me, but I mean, I love the action. I thought it did a really good job of, even though it's technically a sequel to the movie, I think it felt really like a remake, because it kind of paid homage to the original movie. And I mean, it was cool. I enjoyed it, but like I said, I assume the next time I watch it, I'm not going to like it as much as I did the first time. Yeah. So that's why I gave it somewhat low star rating to begin with, which, by the way, you can check all of our star ratings on our website, thenerdspodcast.com. Just click on the nerd reviews. Anything that we formerly reviewed on the podcast, it's on there. hopefully I'm pretty sure Jurassic World's up there. I'm fairly up to date on that, but yeah, so you can do that.
Awesome, man. What is your number 5?
I realized as you were talking about Jurassic World, I realized I said that there was only one of my top 5 anticipated movies on my list. That's actually not right. There's 2, and you can tell right away how shitty my list is going to be by my number 5. The Man from U.N.C.L.E. made my number 5.
Wow.
Yeah. Honestly, this movie is just okay. I may or may not ever watch this movie again. It's a really beautiful action movie, but the characters are not great. The story is kind of boring. I feel like a lot of the action scenes wanted to, and of course, I mean, they were probably filming at the same time. So it's unfair that they're getting kind of lumped together, but I feel like they kind of went in a similar, direction, and they're both spy movies. I think this movie is going to be compared a lot to Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. And I feel like there was action scenes in this movie, Man from U.N.C.L.E., that felt like scenes from Mission Impossible, just not as cool. They were going for the motorcycle scene in Rogue Nation, and it just didn't hit at all for me. And Henry Cavill is just really, really bad in this movie. I felt like he was reading cue cards the whole time. I don't think he's a very good actor. I think he's just a pretty face. I mean, he's a fucking beautiful face, but that doesn't excuse the fact that he's a professional actor, and he is not very good in this movie.
Yeah, I think I liked that movie a little bit more than you did, but it definitely wasn't earth-shattering. It was, I don't know, pretty lackluster. It was a movie that I could see myself watching one day if I'm editing or something.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's not something that I'm going to probably seek out much in the future.
Yeah. I realized once you started to talk that I put it on my top 5, and I spent the last couple of minutes just bashing it. I didn't say very much good about it. I mean, it is beautifully shot. Guy Ritchie knows how to shoot a fucking movie. I wish sometimes that he would give the writing duties to someone else, because I think he does better when he doesn't take on all of the responsibility. I don't know. It's beautifully shot. I just didn't believe the characters that much. And I think if they had cast someone else in Henry Cavill's space or a spot, I think it would have been a little bit better. But for me, it was an okay movie. I think I might have given it 2.5 stars. I don't remember. Like I said, you can go to our website, thenerdspodcast.com, and correct me if you need to. But I may watch this movie, but it will be something like Netflix one day when I'm bored, editing or whatever, like you said.
Okay. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so you can definitely tell the caliber of my list of that made number 5. I was having a hard time finding 5.
Really?
To be honest with you. Well, cause I mean, the whole date range thing it kind of hurts me a little bit.
Yourself a little.
All right. So what's your number 4?
My number 4 is Ant-Man.
Okay, cool.
So I really appreciated how intimate this movie was, especially for a Marvel movie, because that universe has gotten so big. I love the cast in Ant-Man. Paul Rudd was fantastic, and I also really liked Evangeline Lilly and Michael Pena in it. I thought the movie was a little scattered, and the CGI in it was a subpar in a way, but that didn't really take away from my overall enjoyment of it. Like I said, I appreciate how intimate it was, and that kind of has to do with how simple the story was. It was systematic, and that kind of played against it a little bit, but it also kind of played into its charm. You know, in the end, it tried to be a little bit different, kind of like the Guardians of the Galaxy did last year. And I really enjoyed that. It was it was a nice breath of fresh air as far as Marvel is concerned. I didn't love this movie, but it was definitely one of the better summer movies I saw, especially at the tail end of the summer whenever we got a lot of shit, like Fantastic
in the actual summer.
Yeah. No, but that's my number 4 is Ant-Man.
All right. Well, this is going to be on my list later, so I won't go ahead and talk about it now. I'll just wait until later. So I'm just going to go right into number 4, and this is for sure cheating. I recognize the fact that it is cheating, but like I said, my list is really shitty, and it was hard for me to find 5. So I'm going to talk about Cop Car, which is really cheating because it's technically its release date is when it's premiered at film festivals and everything, but nobody watched. I mean, other than if you're a legit critic, you didn't get to see this movie until it was just released. I think about a month ago when I talked about it on the podcast, it had a wider release in theaters, but it got a release on digital. I don't think it's out on DVD or Blu-ray yet. I think it comes out in a couple of weeks, if I'm not mistaken. So it's not quite out on Blu-ray and DVD yet. but it did get a wider release during summer. So I was having a hard time finding movies to put on this list. So I included this one. I think it does a really great job of kind of capturing how cool it would be if two 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, however old these boys are in this movie, how cool it would be if we were those kids and finding a cop car. And there was a lot of moments in the movie that remind me a lot of Boyhood, where you just assume something bad's gonna happen and it doesn't. Well, eventually it does, but not just them dicking around and playing around with a car. Nothing really bad happens with that. Kevin Bacon's really great in it. And I've talked about this movie on the podcast before, and I stated that it was Kevin Bacon's best performance because I couldn't think of a movie that I really enjoyed him being in, before this movie. He just nailed it. There is parts in the middle that kind of sag a little bit for me. They get away from the kids for a little bit, and that was kind of the heart of the movie for me. That wasn't great, but it kind of picks up towards the end. The third act is really great and really action packed, and I appreciated it. So that's my number 4.
I actually forgot to mention Kevin Bacon is also in Black Mass. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I listed off all the people that were in that movie, and I forgot Kevin Bacon.
He's very forgettable.
I really want to see Cop Car, though. I almost rented it on iTunes today, but I ended up watching something else. So
yeah, I really would suggest it. It makes me curious and excited for the Spider-Man reboot, even though the writers of Vacation are writing Spider-Man. The guy that directed Cop Car is directing Spider-Man. So awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, cool. So my number 3 is another Marvel movie. It's Avengers: Age of Ultron. And I'll be honest, I was just sitting here thinking about this. It's been 5 months since that movie came out? Just about, almost. So I don't remember it as well as I did whenever we reviewed it, but I did enjoy it very much.
Comes out in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to rewatching it again on Blu-ray to see if my opinions change, but I did like it a lot. I liked it more than you did, if I recall correctly. And I don't know. It was a fun movie. You can't go wrong with the Avengers. It was, again, kind of like what I said about Jurassic World. It was the definition of a popcorn movie, especially, this day and age. It was superheroes fighting a big robot, and the Avengers has become so synonymous, and Marvel's become so synonymous with summer blockbuster season, and it's going to continue that way for the foreseeable future. I think that, these Marvel movies will keep popping up on lists like this for us, because we're such big nerds and such big superhero fans. The movie itself wasn't as definitive as the first Avengers. I would say it probably suffers because we are kind of used to this universe interlocking, and we've seen this group of characters fight together before. There were some slow parts in the movie that I didn't like. But all in all, I thought Ultron was a great villain, and James Spader did a great job, and I really enjoyed the addition of Scarlet Witch and the Vision specifically. Quicksilver I could have done without, and spoiler alert, he died, so who gives a shit? If you didn't see the Avengers and you're listening to the nerds looking forward to talk about their top 5 summer movies, then
that's your own fault.
Yeah, right, really. So I don't know. I think I'm looking forward to Captain America Civil War more than I was looking forward to Avengers. And I think that might do more for the Marvel universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, than the Avengers did. But I mean, it was a fun movie, and I'm looking forward to seeing it again.
I think that even if I didn't put that caveat as far as the summer movie, like the season, the way I do, and I don't know if this movie would have made my list either way.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. Even just going through this top 5, I'm just kind of exhausted. It was really a bad summer.
Yeah.
I enjoyed Age of Ultron, but in past summers, it wouldn't have made my top 5.
Yeah, I don't think it would have made mine
this summer.
Yeah. It's an okay movie. It's probably, I wouldn't say it's one of the weaker Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, just because the 2 Thor movies are just not that great. And there's a few turds here and there. But for me, the first one, it feels like the end of something.
Yeah.
Loki was a villain that we knew about in past movies. It was building up, and then it ended with the first Avengers, and then phase 2 was building up, and then it didn't end with Age of Ultron, and that really bothered me. It felt like a bridge, and I didn't want a bridge. I wanted it to end.
Yeah.
And, it just didn't give that to me. And Ultron was a good villain, but it just felt like he was really rushed. And then he was introduced. You got to see him for a little bit and then he was gone. And so it didn't have the same satisfaction as the first one did.
Oh yeah. I definitely agree with that as well.
Yeah. And it drags at certain spots too.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like Avengers Infinity War might be more what you're looking forward to.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because that's not going to just be the culmination of phase 3. That's honestly like the culmination of all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, because they've been introducing us to these stones that go into the Infinity Gauntlet since what was the first movie that introduced them? Was it Thor or was it the first Avengers movie? Either way.
It was Thor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So either way, it's been a really big build up.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm more excited for Captain America Civil War than I was for Age of Ultron.
Oh, for sure. It's almost like it's another Avengers movie. There's so many people in it.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, man. What is your number 3?
My number 3, and I talked about it a little bit when I talked about Man from U.N.C.L.E., is Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. I really enjoyed this movie. I actually enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to. It didn't even make my list. It really wasn't on my radar coming into the summer. I mean, I'm a fan of the movies, the Mission Impossible movies, but I think I've only seen all of them like once. Like it's not a franchise that I'm clamoring for. I don't think I own any of them on DVD or Blu-ray. It's just one of those things that I enjoy them. I'd like to say that I'm a fan of the franchise, but I probably won't ever watch any of the movies again. But this one I thoroughly enjoyed. The last 2 have been really, really good. I mean, well, I guess the last 3 were really good.
Oh yeah, for sure.
2 was probably the only speed bump as far as I'm concerned. And even that is not that bad of a movie. Like, I feel like if you make these if you understand what they are, which is the classic summer popcorn movie, I think that, you really can't make a bad movie. A bad Mission Impossible movie.
Yeah. Actually, thinking back to the summer and as I'm going through my list, I should have probably put this movie on my list. I think I ended up giving it 3.5 stars, and I just said, 3 minutes ago or however many minutes ago that, I would have bumped Jurassic World down to a 3. So theoretically, it should be on my top 5, because I really did enjoy it quite a bit, and it was a really fun movie. And I will buy it when it comes out. I do own the Mission Impossible movies, and this was a great entry for the franchise.
Yeah. The only thing that I would say about it is the villain was just kind of blah for me.
Yeah.
Like they build up the syndicate, and I really appreciated that, because it was kind of like the IMF have always had the upper hand. It was like they finally met their match. They had the anti-IMF, and then the villain that runs the syndicate was just kind of blah for me. And they kind of tricked him at the end pretty easily. And so that kind of bothered me. It didn't really pay off the way I wanted it to, but the lead up to it and the action scenes, that motorcycle scene that I talked about earlier with Man from U.N.C.L.E. it's fantastic. It's just one scene after another that was just great. And and that's one thing I don't mean to keep shitting on Man from U.N.C.L.E., but it was just, that was the thing that I never really got from that movie. Like even that final chase scene, it just felt like he was just driving up a mountain. Like I feel like they were trying for that Mission Impossible moment and they just couldn't get it. And this movie has like 3 or 4 of those moments.
Oh yeah.
So
sure.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I would say that I would probably put this movie on my list if I expanded those dates or expanded my criteria before I'd put Age of Ultron on my list.
Yeah, I would. I can't say I would agree with that, because I did not do that with my list. But thinking back to it and hearing you just kind of jog my memory on that movie and how much I enjoyed it, I would put that on my list in retrospect.
All right, cool, man. We're moving right along. So what's your number 2?
My number 2 is Mad Max Fury Road.
All right.
So this was one of the more beautiful movies I had seen in a long time, and that stands today, even like 4 months after it came out. It had a really grungy feel to it, which was awesome. So it felt like a Mad Max movie, that what we were used to with the character, but with like a 2015 spin on it, which was pretty cool. Obviously, this movie has become very well known for its use of practical effects.
Yep.
And that's awesome. I always love when a movie does that. That's part of the reason I'm looking forward to The Force Awakens so much. I mean, one of the many reasons I'm looking forward to that movie, but I love the use of practical effects in this day of age. It takes a lot of hard work to do that, I think, and It's easier than cutting some corners with CGI. George Miller did a fantastic job directing this movie. I'm glad that he was able to bounce back with his career to do a movie like this, especially in his older age. And, I mentioned this whenever we did the review. There was an article I read that kind of questioned, how does a movie like this even exist? I mean, it uses practical effects. It's a franchise that's been dead for like 30 years. It was expensive. It's weird. It's violent. It's just on paper, it shouldn't have worked, but it was awesome, and it was great storytelling, and it was one of the better movies this year for sure.
Yeah, for sure. It's up there. It's pretty much neck and neck. It's almost like a 3-horse race for me right now for my favorite movie of the year. And this is one of them. I don't want to spoil my list for later in the year, but well, I guess early next year is when we'll do that list. But I love this fucking movie. Have you seen it since it came out on Blu-ray?
No, I fucked up. I haven't even bought it yet. So.
Oh, really?
So
I pre-order all my stuff on Amazon now.
This is going to get super nerd. So I'm a big Blu-ray collector, and I don't buy as much as I used to, but I'm really into like limited editions and stuff like that. And Best Buy had a Steelbook edition of this, and I was like, I'm getting that fucking Steelbook. And then of course it sold out online. It sold out in stores, like going for $60 on eBay.
Fuck that, man.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, well, fuck this. And I held out because the same thing happened with Guardians of the Galaxy. They had a steelbook of that, and the week after it came out, they restocked it online. So I held out to see if they would restock Mad Max, and they never did.
Yeah.
And then, the sales are over and the price is like $25 to $30. And it's like, man, I love this movie, but I know it's going to go on sale again. So I kind of shot myself in the foot, so I'm waiting for it to get a little cheaper.
Yeah. I just watched it just recently with my wife who didn't go see it with us. She didn't seem very interested in it. And honestly, she didn't really seem all that interested in it when we were watching it. Yeah. It was really disappointing because I felt like it was a movie that, even though it is weird and kind of grungy and very obviously action heavy, I felt like it was just such a fucking awesome movie that I felt like even her, who is not a big action fan, would appreciate it. And she didn't seem all that interested, which was really disappointing for me. But, I loved it just as much as I did the first time. And it actually was one of those movies which just kind of shows how great it is. It's one of those movies where I watched it the second time, and some movies you'll watch it the second time, like you mentioned with Jurassic World, and you kind of pick it apart a little bit more. With Mad Max, I kind of had the opposite effect. It kind of had the opposite effect on me. I watched it and kind of appreciated it more because I appreciated the little things because I wasn't caught up in how just amazing it looked. I was kind of much more like looking at the details and like trying to figure out in my mind like how they shot this or how they shot that. And it was just, I appreciated it more versus some movies where you watch and you're picking it apart. Oh, I didn't notice this before, and this is kind of stupid or whatever. And so you dislike the movie a little bit more than you did the first time. Mad Max, I actually appreciated a lot more than I did the first time.
All right, man. Awesome. What is your number 2?
Well, my number 2 is Ant-Man. I thoroughly enjoyed it, as did you. I actually have reviewed this movie twice, so I'll keep this pretty brief. I reviewed it for our friends over at The Obsessive Viewer on one of their episodes, and that was a lot of fun. And then, of course, I think it was the week you had to miss a week or something. I don't remember. And so we did something. I can't remember. And so we just did Ant-Man the next week. And so I basically reviewed this movie 2 weeks in a row. But it was a lot of fun, and I'm glad that I enjoyed it, because it kind of would have been a chore if I had to review a movie twice that I didn't really like. So I definitely enjoyed that. It's a fun movie. I think it blends the comedy and action really well. I appreciated the caper aspect of this movie. I just really like heist movies, and this, for a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, I thought it was really cool that it was basically just a heist movie. So I appreciated that. And I think you even did it when you talked about it. It gets compared to Guardians of the Galaxy because it has the same type of tone and comedy to it. Ultimately, I think Guardians of the Galaxy is the better movie. I think it's a tighter, better put together movie. There's certain aspects of this movie, like some of the side characters, like his group of friends, just those characters just didn't do it for me. And in Guardians of the Galaxy, everything hit for me.
Yeah.
So I think ultimately, even though they are similar movies, I think Guardians of the Galaxy is the better movie of the two, but that doesn't mean it's a bad movie. I really enjoyed this movie. I thought Paul Rudd did an excellent job. I'm still kind of curious to see what an Edgar Wright Ant-Man movie would have looked like, but I mean, he still got writing credit. So ultimately, I think the bullet points of his script are still in there. The blueprint of his movie still there. The Avengers stuff felt a little forced for me, even though it was cool for him to see him square off against a character we've seen. I really enjoy the small scenes that we've seen him in other movies. I really appreciate his character. So that was cool. Yeah, I don't think this movie got the play that I think it deserved. Corey Stoll is amazing. I love him in The Strain and House of Cards, and I thought he was a really great villain in this, which that was one thing about Guardians of the Galaxy that I didn't really like, was the villain wasn't all that defined, and I thought they did a lot better job in Ant-Man. So if you were comparing the pros and cons of those two movies, I definitely give the edge to Corey Stoll and Ant-Man as far as the villain is concerned.
I forgot to mention Corey Stoll is also in Black Mass.
God damn it. You could have sold me on Black Mass if you just told me Corey Stoll was in it.
Corey Stoll is in it. I mean, it's not a huge part, but he is in it.
Does he have hair in it?
He does not have hair.
He shaved his head in The Strain. It's so weird.
So they got rid of the bad wig?
Yeah. It's so weird though, because he has hair. And most of you probably don't know this, but I am bald. And so when you shave your head, obviously it's just like shaving your face. You get that 5 o'clock shadow pretty quickly, normally around 5 o'clock. And so in the show, because he had hair, they still have to give him the little dots where the hair isn't. I mean, the hair isn't because you've seen him without it. And it's just really weird, but that's completely side tangent. But I just think it's still pretty distracting, even though he doesn't have the horrible wig on that show anymore. He still has the little dots where the 5 o'clock shadow is.
So I haven't watched the show and I want to, but do they write it into the script? Like, there's a reason this character needs to shave his head? Or do you think it was just like Corey Stoll's like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm tired of doing this stupid wig shit. Like, I was in Ant-Man, goddammit. I'm not wearing a wig.
They actually, I don't know if I necessarily buy it, but I know Del Toro came out and said, like, in the book, they don't talk, like, there's no reason for him to have hair in the show. Like, in the book, they don't talk about it. So, there was really no reason for him to, and so there was a lot of backlash. And he basically said that there was no place, if we started off him being bald, there's no place he could go from there, because he's a fugitive in the show. He works for the CDC, and then he essentially blacklisted, and he's a fugitive. And so they do it because he has to travel at a certain aspect of the show. And I'm trying to be as vague as possible because I really do think that everyone listening should watch this show. It's one of my favorite shows on TV right now. And so if they knew they were going to do that. And so there was no place for him to go, like, cause obviously he's already bald in real life. So if they started off that way, it didn't really leave them a whole lot of avenues to go down. So that was his reasoning for it. I don't necessarily know if I buy that or not, but I mean, I guess it makes sense.
Cool.
That was a really too long on Corey Stoll's hair in a TV show that we weren't talking about at all.
At least we put it out there now. So if anybody ever asks what our opinion is on his hair and or lack thereof, we can direct them to this episode.
So where were we? I mean, completely
Ant-Man.
Okay, well, I that was pretty much. I mean, like I said, I reviewed it twice, so that was pretty much all I had to say about it.
All right, awesome. So I'm gonna move on to my number one then, which is Inside Out.
Cool.
So I had loved and adored this movie. It is very adult for a Pixar movie, which Pixar is kind of known for, and I love that about their themes and their storytelling. Not only that, though, it was also pretty cute. I could see how it appeals to kids, which is who it's made for as well, but it's awesome that it appeals to adults as well. It's very inventive, and they took a lot of risks, I think, with it, because a lot of it could have fell flat or not worked, but Pixar being the great studio that they are, everything clicked, and it was very entertaining. I feel like the witty humor in it was really good and that it was very emotionally sophisticated. I mean, it's a movie about emotions, and I think that was it's a really important movie. It's an important movie for kids to see because it teaches you that it's okay to be sad and it's okay to feel these different emotions. You don't always have to be happy, and other emotions can lead to other great things. So it's very moving. I feel like they didn't miss an opportunity to kind of dive into mental health aspect of things, because that's kind of where I thought this movie was headed before it came out. But it was still really amazing, and I think it was one of my higher ranked movies of the year, and I'll probably definitely be talking about it again when we do a top 10 of 2015, unless a bunch of other movies just come out and blow me away between now and then.
I can't see that happening. Like, if you think as highly as I think about this movie,
for sure,
it's going to be on the list. It would just, Oscar season's right around the corner. There would have to be just like fucking monumental movie after monumental movie to knock this out. Like, this is one of those movies is going to be up there. I can't decide if it's going to be my favorite movie so far this year or not. Yeah. It's one of my favorite movies so far this year, but it wasn't actually released in the summer, so I'm not going to talk. I was actually, honestly, this was the movie. I mean, obviously I was upset about Mad Max, but that was released fairly early, so it wasn't really all that close to summer. This one was literally like 3 days away. And I looked at it because I was like, man, I want to say Inside Out should be on this list. But I was like, why did I not put it on my preview list? Like, that didn't make any sense to me because I'm a huge Pixar fan, as you are, Tyler. And so I was like, I would have looked for this movie when I was making my original list. And then I looked and this was really the only movie that I was like, God damn it. Like, I really wanted it to be on my list. Mad Max, of course, I wanted to be on my list, but I knew that it wasn't released during the summer. Yeah. This one, I was just like, I'm pretty sure it was. And then I looked and I was really disappointed.
Yeah. I actually thought that it was.
I think it was June 19th.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
All right, man. What is your number one then?
Well, if you've been paying attention, your process of elimination, I mentioned that The Gift was on my list and I haven't talked about it yet. So obviously it's my number one. I kind of did spoil I mentioned earlier in the episode that I had 3 movies that were kind of like the 3 favorites for being my favorite movie of 2015. I mentioned Mad Max. I've mentioned Inside Out, and this is it. This is the other one. So I did kind of spoil it. Like I said, Oscar season's right around the corner, and it would take a lot of movies just blow me out of the water, and I just don't see that happening for this movie to get knocked down. I think it deserves a lot of praise. I don't know if it got the play that I think it deserved, because I felt like this was my Gone Girl. I know you really liked Gone Girl last year, and I know a lot of people really liked that movie. And for me, it was a well put together movie, but this is my Gone Girl. Like, I thought it was such a better movie. The twists in this movie seemed much more believable because they've established these characteristics with these characters. And for me, it just hit every note. I think the twists play really well. They kind of play on your assumptions. Like, they establish this character, they show you this character, and then they play off, okay, well, this is the bad guy, or he's creepy, so there's something wrong with him, and they kind of play off of that. And I really appreciate that. I love the ending of this movie. I've complained in the past, and I know might sound like a hypocrite, but I do have a justification for it. I've complained in the past that I don't like Inception type endings, that they don't really tell you what's going on. And this sort of has it, but I think it fits so well with the tone of the movie. And basically, I don't know. I can't really say a whole lot without actually giving it away. But basically, it fits with this movie. You're not supposed to know what really happened because a character in the movie's not supposed to know what really happened. And it really, really hit it home for me. And I loved every part of this movie. There wasn't one thing in this movie that I was just like, I didn't really like that. I thought everybody brought their A game, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this movie as well. We talked about it a few episodes back, and if I hadn't kind of set the parameters of popcorn movies, movies that made like probably $100 million or more at the box office, this would definitely be on there. I loved it a lot. Not as much as you did, but it was a really solid movie. And I know I mentioned it when I talked about Black Mass, but Joel Edgerton is in Black Mass as well.
You did mention him,
just
yes.
to kind of bring things full circle, though.
Yeah. All right, so that is our top 5 summer movies. What are we doing next week? Do we even know yet?
I don't know, something nerd related.
Yeah. Are we doing Green Inferno? Do you still want to review that? I think that comes out next week.
Does it really?
I think so. We'll have to talk about it. I think we both have some scheduling issues.
That was the plan.
Yeah.
Was to do Green Inferno. And then thank God after that, we're into Shocktober. Cause I've been looking forward to that for months.
All right, cool. So our last segment, we just kind of like to cap it off with a pretty nerdy question. Nerds are kind of known for asking what your favorite blank is. And so we thought it would be cool to end each episode by asking that question. We take turns, thinking of a subject. It's Tyler's week. I'm pretty sure I know where he's going with this, but Tyler, what is nerd favorite this week?
So it's kind of a tradition on the podcast when we do a top 5 favorite or any kind of thing where we outline favorites. We ask what our least favorite is in whatever genre we're talking about. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask you what your least favorite summer movie was.
Yep.
And I have a feeling we might step on each other's toes a little bit here, just because there was one movie that sticks out for not just us, but a lot of people for being a shitty summer movie and a shitty movie in general. And that is Fantastic Four. So this movie was complete garbage. I hated it. It was boring. It was made for all the wrong reasons. It didn't make a lot of sense. It dragged. Like, the list goes on and on. Like, you are more than welcome to go back and listen to our hour review of it. Another movie I hated this summer was Minions, but as much as I didn't like what they did with that movie, it has its audience and I'm not part of that audience. I feel like I am the person that Fantastic Four was made for.
Yeah.
And it was just really hard to watch in some regards. It was just a really, really bad movie. And we've talked multiple times about the drama behind it, but, you know, you have to be more responsible as a studio and as filmmakers than they were with that property. So that is my least favorite summer movie.
Yeah, normally, well, pretty much every time, I have no idea what you're going to ask me and you have no idea what I'm going to ask you. But I was pretty sure, because it's kind of the tradition, that's what we always do. And so I actually wrote down 2 movies. Yeah. Because I almost was pretty certain you were going to pick Fantastic Four, because it's not even one of the worst movies I've seen this summer. It's probably one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. It's bad. But for the sake of conversation, I wanted to talk about a different movie, and that is The Visit. So I kind of wrote down these 2 movies in case you mentioned the other one. Obviously, it's Fantastic Four by a long shot, but just for the sake of conversation, we reviewed it in kind of a weird what we're into last episode. So I'll be pretty brief. I mean, this movie was just, you said that Minions wasn't made for you. This movie, I don't think, was really made for either one of us. It's a horror movie, which obviously we're huge horror fans, but it's PG-13. Yeah. It's a found footage movie, which I've already gone on record multiple times saying I fucking hate found footage movies. They're the worst. They're so gimmicky. Just be done with them. They're PG-13 horror movie. You just can't do it. Because all it is a series of jump scares, and that's what this movie was. It has the most blatant, like, oh my God, just like, I rolled my eyes so hard, jump scare. It was ridiculous. Oh my God. It was so bad. But that's pretty much all this movie was. It was just, and the fact that it made so much money, he's gonna get another movie. Like, this is his resurgence. People think that this is him returning to form, and it drives me nuts. It's like, did we watch the same movie? Did I get punked? Like, did they show a different movie? Because I just don't understand it, because this movie is fucking garbage.
It is not great at all.
All right. So that's about it for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at The Nerds Podcast, like us on Facebook, follow us on Google+, vote for us for Podcast of the Month at podcastland.com. Email us at thenerdsyou'relooking@gmail.com. Check out the website, thenerdspodcast.com. Rate, review, subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher Radio. Basically any good podcatcher you use, we're on it. Oh, check out the new YouTube channel. I've been doing my New Story Plus, and I'm going to start doing a lot more Let's Plays for Madden as well. I really enjoyed doing my basically the NFL opener preview. I really enjoyed that. So I'll continue doing that throughout the season. I think that's about it.
Yes, sir.
All right. For Patrick Kuhn,
Tyler Hunt,
we are the nerds you're looking for. Take it easy, guys.
See you guys.